Hi everyone, my name is David Lorenze, principal at Black Diamond Realty,
Hi, my name is Melissa Hornbeck. I'm the broker of White Diamond Realty.
and today we are going to be discussing the differences between commercial real estate.
And today I'm going to be talking to you about residential real estate.
In terms of education, there are many similarities, but there are also some stark differences. On the similarity front, the licensing and testing is identical. From a different standpoint, there are two main things to point out. First, sector knowledge. The office sector and the ins and outs of what you need to know and be familiar with and the questions you ask is very different than the industrial sector, than the real estate development sector, than the investing sector. So sector knowledge is a critical component. Secondly, my colleague Kim and I are getting pinned at the end of 2023. CCIM is the best in the world when it comes to commercial real estate education, and for any broker out there that is considering a commercial real estate path, I highly encourage it.
The differences in education between commercial and residential real estate licenses is practically none. The pre-licensing education is exactly the same. I took the same pre-licensing education as any other commercial real estate agent did. So what I think the difference in education between the two fields is experience. It's life experience. They are two very, very different transactions. So you really want to make sure that if you're working with either a commercial or a residential agent, that they have an adequate experience in that field specifically, and not just kind of a broad brush approach to the entire industry.
On the commercial side, we utilize the income approach often. For the income approach, we have an internal underwriting process that utilizes an in-house spreadsheet that shows how the money flows from an income, expense, NOI, debt service, and ultimately getting all the way down to the return on investment, cash flow only, cash flow plus equity build. So we look at assets often from an income approach, what could the asset be producing, as well as the sales comparison approach, what assets have sold in a local market and region, and then ultimately making adjustments similar to the residential world based on various factors.
So pricing a home is extremely important. You have to do a lot of research to make sure that you're in line with the market. With residential real estate, we use what's called the sales comparison approach. So we do our best to do our research and go back about 6 months to a year to find properties that are similar that have sold, and then we adjust those sold prices based on the features of the what we call principal property, or the subject property that we're going to be selling. So we don't do an appraisal because we're not appraisers, but we do go kind of based on appraisal guidelines, trying to stay as close to 6 months to a year as possible, as similar properties as possible, make those adjustments. We also then check what's currently on the market, so we know what our competition is, so that way we're in line with the market. So it's very much a science. You know, it's not just I think the house is worth this much. We really do our due diligence to go in and make sure that we're pricing the property accurately.
So on the Who to Market, our team prides itself in talking about target end users and or target investors that make sense for the market, the asset, and its location. And it varies from sector to sector. So for us, we have an internal process where we brainstorm as a team, talk about the various dynamics of the asset in play, and come up with end users and investors that we think could make sense for that particular property.
The marketing of the property really depends on what type of property it is. So if we are listing a parcel of land, we're going to market it to differently and to a different audience than, say, a $250,000 home that might be appealing to a first-time home buyer. Or if we're marketing a large home with 5 bedrooms, we're probably going to be marketing to somebody who is moving up from a smaller house to a larger house. So we kind of base our marketing strategy on what type of property we're marketing, and then choose our audience from there.
In commercial real estate, the main platforms we use are LoopNet, Crexi, Bright MLS, and Black Diamond Realty's website.
I use a lot of platforms in residential real estate. So we use everything from the GIS assessor's parcel map, we use tax records, we use the MLS system, which stands for multiple listing system, and that is in our market, it's called Paragon. I also use digital contract systems. Specifically, we use ZipLogic, but there are several of those out there in the world. And of course, we all use Google Maps.
That is a challenging question because every sector is so different and markets can change and shift on a frequent basis. In the residential world, we're used to properties moving very quickly. In the commercial world, there are some projects that move at that pace, but then there are other projects where it may take 2-3 years to see a project to the finish line. So it really depends upon sector, it depends upon the asset, and local and regional dynamics.
A residential sale can close anywhere between 2 weeks and 2 months. It really just kind of depends on the financing. If a person is paying cash and all we have to do is title work and no other inspections or anything like that, we can close as early as 2 weeks. However, most people do get loans, so it depends on what type of loan they're getting. If they're doing what we call conventional financing, typically between 30 and 45 days is the closing period. If they're getting government-backed financing, such as an FHA or VA loan, we're looking closer to between 45 and 60.
Great question. So from a seller's perspective, the seller is responsible for deed preparation and often in the state of West Virginia for transfer taxes. The seller is also typically responsible for real estate commissions, and then both buyer and seller are responsible for their attorney fees, and any due diligence items that the buyer wants to do falls into the category of their responsibility.
That is a very good question. It depends on which side of the table you're on. So when you are buying a property, a majority of your expenses are based on the lending. So you have title work fees, you have lender's fees, appraisal fees, things to that effect. So a lot of that is just kind of determined by the type of loan that you're getting. If you're selling a property, a majority of your expenses are on the brokerage fees, the transfer stamps, which is a tax, and then release of your mortgage and creation of the deed. So they're two very different, the fees come from very different sides of the transaction.
Money is a critical part to closing commercial real estate deals. From our perspective, it is our job and duty to our clients to understand, know, and have contacts in the banking world. So we work diligently to connect with, build relationships with, and understand the various thresholds and comfort levels of the banking world, and then make introductions between sellers and buyers and landlords and tenants where appropriate and where we can create win-win situations.
The process of working with the lender, we work very, very closely with lenders during the entire process. Honestly, whether we're representing the seller or the buyer, but of course more so with the buyer. The relationship that we have with our lenders is extremely important in the success of getting a deal across the closing table. So we have very close relationships with many local lenders, and sort of depending on what the buyer's needs are would depend on which lenders that we would recommend, but we always try to recommend at least 3, possibly 5 lenders to each buyer so that they can choose the one that they're most comfortable working with. But aside from the real estate agent or realtor, the lender is the second most important, and I only say that because I'm biased, the second most important person in the transaction.
If you are looking for commercial real estate expertise,
if you're looking for a residential professional,
contact us at Black Diamond Realty.
Contact White Diamond Realty today.
Our team looks forward to hearing from you.